Hello everyone. In a previous video, we discussed the architecture of iOS platform. Now in today's lecture, we will discuss the iOS app structure. Now what iOS app structure consists of? First of all, whenever you have to design the iOS application, you must sure about the iOS app that you are going to design. So first point is defining the concept. In this, you have initially to think about the concept that you need to design application. This means firstly you have to think clearly about the application that you want to design. You must ask yourself the following questions and you must have the answers to all these questions. First is, what is the purpose of your app? It means that why you are building this app. Second is, who is your audience? It means if you design this app, who will be using it? Third is what problem is your app trying to solve? Next is, what content will your app incorporate? It means what content will be there in your application. Now the second component of the structure should be user interface design. It means a user wants to interact with the application in an easy way. So the user interface design should be in this way that any user can easily understand it. Second is, keep in mind about the user while designing iOS app. Third is, make the app design simple and clear. It should not be complicated. Now in user interface design, there are various components that a user should take care of while designing iOS app. First is MVC. MVC means Model View Controller. Now what Model View Controller is? It is a software design pattern which is used to develop the applications. It helps developer to split the iOS app in independent parts. It splits the application into three parts. Means MVC is Model View Controller. It has three components in it. First is model, second is view, third is controller. Now what model is? Model means designing the layout of iOS. View means how the app layout is viewable to the users. Third is controller. That means how the app can be controlled by the user interface. So we will discuss. First is model. It represents the data management between the view and view controller. Second is view. It represents the user interface view part of the application. That means it represents that part of the application that is visible and accessible to the user. Third component is controller. It enables the smooth movement of multiple view and enable operation definition. That means the controller is responsible for smooth functioning of the application. Now this is a diagram showing the model view controller and data objects communicate with the documents. Second is view component. In view component, what here is? It is user interface window where the user is interacting with the application. Third is view and UI object. That means view of an application and user interface objects. This component is directly connected to the user interface. Now this is a controller component. Here it is UI application, user interface application on which user has to work. Second is application delegate. This loop is showing the working of these components. And this is view controller that controls the view of the application to the user. Now these are the types of views available in iOS app. First is content view, second is collection view, third is control view, fourth is bars view, fifth is input view, sixth is container view, and seventh is model. Now what content view is? It displays a particular type of content. Its name is indicating this view is responsible to display the content of iOS app. Example of these views are image view or label. Second is collection. It displays the collection or group of views. Third are controls. It performs actions and displays the information. It can be button, slider or switch. Next is bars. Bars means they are used to navigate or perform actions. It can be toolbar, navigation bar or tab bar. Next is input. Input means it is totally related to the user input text. What the user inputs the text is related to this type of view. It can be search bar, text view. Next is container. It serves as containers for other view. It can be view or scroll view. Next is model. It interrupts the regular flow of the application to allow a user to perform an action. It means if the user is running an application and in between the application he is needed to perform some action, then this model view is used. Now, third component of iOS app structure is use of storyboards to lay out views. It means we have to use a storyboard, means how your app is working or running from starting to end. The view's location within that hierarchy is determined by where you place it. After you add a view to your scene, you can resize, manipulate, configure, and move it on the canvas. Now, canvas is a screen where your app is running. The canvas also displays an outline view of the objects in your interface. Fourth component is use of auto layout to position views. When you start positioning views in your storyboard, you need to consider a variety of situations. That means whenever you have to reorganize the components or reorganizing the views of your storyboard, reorganize the storyboard components, you have to consider a variety of situations. iOS apps run on a number of different devices with various screen size, orientations, and languages. You need a dynamic interface that responds seamlessly to changes in screen size, device orientation, localization, and metrics. iOS app adjusts itself according to the device that a user uses. The next component is defining the interaction. It means how the user is interacting with your iOS app should be well defined. The app response to the user action is then reflected back in the interface because the user is in control of some pieces of the application code that are executed. Controllers are objects that maintain view by responding to the user action and populating the views with content. Now, what views are? Views are notified of changes in model data through the controllers of application, and controllers converts user initiated changes. Now, here in the diagram you can see model and view are related to the controller. Here the model communicates with controller and controller communicates with the view. Here controller is completely responsible for all the view changes. Next is view controller. The view controller is to control the view changes. First is the next step is to control the visual elements and respond to the user input. In an iOS application, you use a view controller. It can be user interface view controller to manage a content view. Means in iOS application, the user uses user interface view controller to manage the view of the iOS application. To define interaction in your application, you make the use of view controller files with the views in your storyboard. Now, next component is actions. Now, what actions are? Actions are generally what you do to your iOS app. That is an action. It is a piece of code that is associated to an actions component is a event handler. It is a piece of code that is associated to an event that can happen in your application. When that event takes place, the code is executed. You can define an action to achieve anything from operating a piece of data to updating the user interface. Means you can define or you can use an action to achieve anything from the iOS app to update the user interface. Now, how the action can be defined? It can be defined using IB action, restore defaults, then ID of the sender. It is used to define an action. The sender parameters point to the object. Here, what the sender means? It points to the object that is responsible for triggering the action. IB action return type is a special keyword. It is outlet. It provides a way to reference interface object. It means it is a way that is used to provide the reference to the user interface object. The object you appended. Now, what are the interface objects? The objects that you append or attach to your storyboard from source code files. Now, to construct an outlet control drag from a certain object in your storyboard to a view controller file. Now, if you want to construct an outlet, you have to use the control drag from a certain object in your storyboard to a view controller file. This operation generates a property for the object in your view controller file which permits you access and manipulate the object from code at runtime. Outlets are defined in IB outlet property. Now, next component is controls. Control means that controls the behavior of your application. It is a user interface object. Controls is totally related to the user interface, so it is a user interface object such as button or slider or switch that user operate to interface with the content. Means whenever the user is interacting or using the iOS application, he or she may use the controller by using button, slider or switch. Sec- Second is controls allow your code to receive messages from the user interface. It means it is a responsibility of controls to receive the message from user interface. There are three categories of control events. Now the control events can be of three types. First is touch and drag events. These events occur when a user interact with a control with a touch or drag. Means when a user interact with the application by using touch and drag, it is called as touch and drag event. Second is editing event. It occurs when a user edits a text field. Third is value change events. As its name is indicating, it occurs when a user manipulates or changes a control, causing it to emit a series of different values. Now, in this session, we have discussed the 9 components of iOS app project. Now, in the next session, we will discuss the installation of Microsoft Visual Studio 2019 to develop an iOS application. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next video.